You wouldn't believe that the baby-faced boy from Texas would become the most decorated American soldier in history, that he'd kill 240 enemy soldiers, that Hollywood would turn him into a star, that behind those gentle eyes lived memories so dark they'd haunt him until his last breath. Audie Murphy was supposed to die 100 times over, but death, it seemed, had other plans. Picture this: a skinny kid, 5'5", weighing barely 110 pounds, rejected by the Marines, rejected by the Navy. The Army almost turned him away too. Too small, they said, too young, too weak. His sister had to forge documents just to get him enlisted. That's how desperate he was to escape the cotton fields of Texas, where poverty had already killed his father and was slowly claiming his mother. June 1942. While other boys his age were worried about prom dates, Audie was learning how to kill, and he was disturbingly good at it. What makes a hero? Is it the medals, the body count, or is it something else entirely? Something that emerges when a human being is pushed beyond every conceivable limit. You see, Audie Murphy wasn't born a warrior. He was born hungry, born angry, born with 12 siblings in a sharecropper's shack where dinner was often nothing but cornbread soaked in milk, where shoes were a luxury, where his mother's tears were the soundtrack of his childhood as she watched her children starve. The war didn't make him a killer. Poverty did. The Army just gave him targets. Sicily, 1943. His first kill. The German soldier probably had a mother too, maybe a wife, children, but in that moment, through the iron sights of his M1 Garand, all Audie saw was the enemy. The rifle kicked. The man fell. And something inside that Texas farm boy changed forever. You want to know what it feels like to take a life? Audie would later say it was like watching himself from outside his body, like someone else was pulling the trigger, like his soul had stepped aside to let something darker take control. His fellow soldiers started noticing something unsettling about Murphy. While others vomited after their first combat, while grown men cried for their mothers in foxholes, Audie remained eerily calm, methodical, precise. It was as if the battlefield was where he finally felt at home, as if all those years of hunting squirrels to keep his family from starving had been preparing him for this moment. But here's what the war movies don't tell you. Killing gets easier. Each trigger pull requires less thought than the last. Each dead enemy becomes just another number, another obstacle removed. Your humanity doesn't disappear all at once. It leaks out slowly, like air from a punctured tire, until one day you realize you've become exactly what the enemy fears most. Machine designed for one purpose: survival through violence. The Italian campaign was just the appetizer. France would be the main course. And in the frozen forests of the Colmar Pocket, Audie Murphy would serve up a feast of destruction that would echo through military history forever. His company commander called him a gentle-eyed killer. Think about that contradiction. How does gentleness and murder coexist in the same person? How does a boy who once shared his only biscuit with a starving dog become a man who could gun down enemies without blinking? War doesn't create monsters. It reveals them. And sometimes, just sometimes, it reveals heroes too. The tragedy is that in Audie Murphy's case, they were the same person. January 26, 1945, the Colmar Pocket, France. The temperature, 14 degrees. The enemy, 6 German tanks and 250 infantry soldiers. Audie Murphy's resources, a burning tank destroyer, a field telephone, and enough rage to light up the winter sky. What happened next defies belief. You have to understand, when a tank destroyer catches fire, it becomes a bomb waiting to explode. Any sane person runs, but Audie Murphy had left sanity somewhere back in Sicily. He climbed onto that burning vehicle, manned the .50 caliber machine gun, and for the next hour, he became death incarnate. Picture yourself in his position, flames licking at your feet, the metal beneath you so hot it's cooking through your boots, German 88mm shells screaming past your head, each one capable of turning you into pink mist. Your own vehicle could explode at any second. And yet you stay. You keep firing. You keep killing. Why? What possesses a man to choose almost certain death? For Audie, the answer was simple. His men were behind him. 19-year-old kids from places like Iowa and Brooklyn who just wanted to go home. If he ran, they died. If he stayed and fought, maybe, just maybe, some of them would see another sunrise. The mathematics of war are cruel but simple. One life for many, his life for theirs. The Germans kept coming, wave after wave, and Audie kept cutting them down. His telephone, his only link to artillery support, never left his hand. Between bursts of machine gun fire, he was calling in coordinates, directing American shells onto German positions with the calm precision of a traffic controller, all while standing on a burning bomb. You know what's terrifying? He was smiling. Witnesses would later swear that in the middle of this hellfire, with death closing in from all sides, Audie Murphy was actually smiling. Not the smile of madness, but something worse, the smile of a man who had found his purpose, who had discovered that his gift, his terrible gift, was staying alive when everything around him was designed to kill him. When the smoke cleared, when the last German had retreated or died, the scoreboard was staggering. 50 enemy soldiers dead, 6 tanks destroyed or disabled. An entire German company, 250 men, stopped cold by one undersized Texan with a death wish and a machine gun. They gave him the Medal of Honor for that day. But medals can't capture what really happened on that burning tank. They can't explain how a human being transcends their own mortality, how flesh and blood becomes something more, something less, something other than human. But here's what they don't put in the citation. Audie Murphy was wounded. Shrapnel in his leg, bleeding through his uniform, leaving red footprints in the snow as he finally climbed down from that burning wreck. He'd been hurt before, shot, blown up, knocked unconscious. His body was a road map of scars, each one a story of a day he should have died but didn't. You carry your wounds differently when you're poor. When you've grown up without money for doctors, you learn to ignore pain, to push through it, to treat your body like a tool that you'll use until it breaks completely. Audie had been doing that since he was 7 years old, picking cotton until his fingers bled, working through fever and hunger because his family needed him to. The war just gave him new reasons to bleed. By 1945, Company B had a saying, Murphy's luck. It became a superstition, almost a religion. Stay close to Murphy and you'll survive. Follow Murphy and you'll make it home. They didn't understand that it wasn't luck at all. It was something far more disturbing, a complete absence of fear, not courage, which is acting despite fear, but something more troubling, the total inability to feel afraid anymore. You see, fear keeps us human. It reminds us that we're mortal, that we have something to lose. But what happens when you've already lost everything? When you've watched your mother die at age 50, worn out by poverty and too many pregnancies, when you've seen your siblings scattered to orphanages and foster homes, when the only family you have left are the men beside you in the foxholes, you become dangerous, not just to the enemy, but to yourself. The army kept promoting him. Corporal, sergeant, lieutenant. They pinned so many medals on his chest that his dress uniform looked like a hardware store had exploded on it. But each promotion, each medal, each recognition of his lethal excellence took him further from the Texas farm, boy he'd once been. You can't go home again when home was a place that hunger and death had already destroyed. You can't become a civilian when the only thing you're good at is killing. The other soldiers started to notice the change, how Murphy would volunteer for the suicide missions, how he'd take point on every patrol, how he seemed almost disappointed when a day passed without combat. They thought he was brave. They didn't realize he was already dead inside, just waiting for his body to catch up. VE Day, May 8, 1945. The war in Europe was over. For most soldiers, it was the happiest day of their lives. Audie Murphy spent it alone, sitting on a bombed-out wall, cleaning his rifle. What do you do when the only thing that gives your life, meaning, suddenly ends? When the skills that made you a hero become useless overnight. You want to know the cruel irony? Audie Murphy survived 27 months of combat. He participated in 9 major campaigns. He was wounded 3 times, nearly died of gangrene, contracted malaria, and had enough close calls to fill a cemetery. The Germans couldn't kill him. The Italians couldn't kill him. The war itself, with all its mechanized fury, couldn't claim the boy from Texas. But peace nearly destroyed him. He came home to parades, to handshakes from generals and politicians, to a nation desperate for heroes for some meaning to extract from all that death. They put his face on magazine covers. Life magazine called him the most decorated soldier in American history. He was 20 years old and already a legend, already a ghost. Hollywood came calling, of course. How could they resist? A real-life war, hero with movie star looks and a story that wrote itself. James Cagney saw his picture in Life and invited him to California, gave him a place to stay, introduced him to directors and producers. Everyone wanted a piece of Audie Murphy. Everyone wanted to turn his trauma into entertainment. But you can't just flip a switch and become normal again. You can't spend 3 years as a predator and suddenly become prey to normal life's mundane concerns. At night, the Germans came back. In his dreams, he was still on that burning tank, still firing, still killing. He'd wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. The doctors called it battle fatigue. Today we'd call it PTSD. Audie called it his personal hell. He slept with a loaded .45 under his pillow, insisted on sitting, with his back to walls in restaurants. Couldn't tolerate loud noises, not because they scared him, but because they triggered something darker. That killing machine the army had created was still there, coiled like a spring, ready to unleash violence at the slightest provocation. How do you explain to your new Hollywood friends that you're not afraid of dying? You're afraid of living. The movies saved him. Or maybe they damned him. It's hard to tell which. His first roles were awkward, stilted. How do you pretend to be someone else when you barely know who you are? But gradually, something clicked. Maybe it was because acting, like combat, required you to shut off parts of yourself, to become someone else, to follow orders and hit your marks. The same dissociation that helped him kill helped him perform. The great irony? His biggest role would be playing himself. To Hell and Back, based on his autobiography, became Universal's biggest moneymaker in 1955. Imagine that. Reliving your worst nightmares for the entertainment of millions. Standing on fake battlefields, firing blanks at extras dressed as Germans, while the real memories crashed over you like waves. During filming, Audie insisted on toning down his actual exploits. The truth, he said, would seem too unbelievable. Think about that. His real life was too extreme for Hollywood. The things he'd done, the number of men he'd killed, the times he'd cheated death, it all had to be reduced, made smaller, made palatable for audiences who wanted heroes but not monsters. You know what's worse than being forgotten? Being remembered wrong. Being turned into a caricature of yourself, a sanitized version suitable for Saturday matinees. He made 44 films over 21 years, mostly westerns. Always the good guy with the gun, saving towns and damsels. It was typecasting, of the cruelest sort. Forever doomed to play versions of himself, the violent hero, the killer with a conscience. Each role a reminder of what he was, what he'd always be. But the cameras couldn't capture the real performance, the daily act of pretending to be normal, of smiling for fans when inside you're screaming, of signing autographs with hands that had ended so many lives. That was his greatest role, playing Audie Murphy, American hero, when inside lived something far darker and more complex. The nightmares never stopped. If anything, they got worse. Success brought money, but not peace. Fame brought admirers, but not understanding. How could anyone understand? How could anyone who hadn't been there comprehend what it meant to be so good at something so terrible? The pills helped. At first, sleeping pills to quiet the dreams. Pep pills to get through the days. Pain pills for the old wounds that never really healed. The VA doctors handed them out like candy, desperate to help the hero who couldn't help himself. This was the 1950s. Nobody talked about addiction. Nobody understood that you were just trading one war for another. You have to understand something about Audie Murphy. He was physiologically different from other people. The war had rewired him. His startle response was nearly non-existent. His resting heart rate was abnormally low. Tests showed that his nervous system had adapted to extreme stress by essentially shutting down normal fear responses. He was, in medical terms, the perfect soldier. In human terms, he was broken beyond repair. The gambling started as a distraction, something to feel when you couldn't feel anything else. The rush of winning or losing money became a substitute for the adrenaline of combat. But like all substitutes, it was never quite enough. He lost fortunes at poker tables and racetracks, chasing a high that could never match the intensity of surviving when you should have died. His marriages crumbled. How do you love someone when you can't feel anything? How do you trust someone with your darkness when you can't even face it yourself? His first wife, Wanda, tried to understand. She'd wake up to find him gone, walking the streets at 3 a.m. trying to outrun memories. She'd find him in the garage, cleaning weapons he didn't need, preparing for enemies who would never come. But here's what breaks your heart. He tried. God, how he tried. He'd show up at veteran hospitals, spending hours with wounded soldiers, understanding their pain in ways the doctors never could. He'd quietly pay for funerals when fellow veterans died broke. He became an advocate for PTSD research decades before anyone took it seriously, using his fame to demand better treatment for the walking wounded. He knew he was sick. That's the tragedy. He knew the war had broken something inside him that could never be fixed. But in the 1950s and 60s, admitting mental illness was seen as weakness. And Audie Murphy, the most decorated soldier in American history, couldn't be weak. So he suffered in silence, self-medicating with pills and adrenaline, playing the hero while dying inside. "I'm not a hero," he'd tell reporters who asked. "The real heroes didn't come home." But that was the problem, wasn't it? Part of him didn't come home either. May 28, 1971. A small plane carrying Audie Murphy crashed into Brush Mountain, Virginia. He was 45 years old. Fog, they said. Pilot error, mechanical failure. The details didn't matter. What mattered was that the war had finally caught up with him. Not German bullets or artillery shells, but the slow, grinding warfare of trying to live with what he'd done, what he'd become, what he'd survived. You want to know something strange? The crash site became a pilgrimage destination. Veterans from across the country would hike up that mountain, leaving medals and unit patches and bottles of whiskey. They understood something the rest of us didn't, that Audie Murphy had been fighting 2 wars his entire life. The one in Europe ended in 1945. The one in his head killed him in 1971. But let's go back. Let's talk about what nobody wanted to talk about then, and what we still struggle to discuss now. The cost of creating perfect soldiers, the price of turning boys into killers and then expecting them to turn back into boys when the killing is done. Audie Murphy killed 240 enemy soldiers. That's the official count. Think about that number. 240 human beings. 240 sets of dreams and fears and loves ended by one man who was barely old enough to vote when he started. Each kill made him more valuable to the army, more decorated, more honored. Each kill also carved away another piece of his soul, until what remained was a hollow hero, perfect for postcards and propaganda, but incapable of finding peace. We ask our soldiers to do the impossible, to be compassionate and ruthless, to kill without hatred but also without becoming killers, to turn violence on and off like a faucet, and when they can't, when the programming runs too deep, when the trauma can't be switched off, we call them heroes and hope that's enough. It's not enough. It was never enough. Audie Murphy spent 26 years after the war trying to feel normal, trying to be the hero everyone said he was instead of the killer he knew himself to be. He made movies, raised children, smiled for cameras, and died a little more each day. The medals on his chest were anchors, dragging him down into depths no civilian could understand. But here's what you need to understand about Audie Murphy, about all our warriors who come home carrying invisible wounds. They're not broken. They're changed. changed in ways that our society doesn't know how to handle, doesn't know how to honor, doesn't know how to heal. We want our heroes simple. Good versus evil, us versus them, victory parades and happy endings. We don't want to know that the most decorated soldier in our history spent his nights fighting battles nobody could see, that he locked himself in hotel rooms to protect others from his nightmares, that he saw the faces of every man he'd killed, remembered them more clearly than his own siblings' faces. You know what Audie Murphy really was? He was the truth about war that nobody wanted to hear. That you can win every battle and still lose the war for your soul. That medals and movies and money can't fill the hole that violence carves in your heart. That sometimes survival is its own kind of death. He tried to tell us, in his autobiography and interviews, in the haunted look that never left his eyes. He tried to explain that heroes aren't born, they're made. Forged in fire and blood and fear until what emerges is something both more and less than human. Something necessary in war and tragic in peace. The real Audie Murphy wasn't the smiling cowboy on movie posters or the stern soldier in uniform. He was a damaged child who became a perfect killer, who became a broken man trying desperately to find his way back to humanity. He never made it all the way back. Most of them never do. This is the price of war that nobody talks about. Not the dead, we know how to honor the dead. It's the living who carry war home in their bones, in their dreams, in the way they flinch at backfiring cars and sleep with weapons nearby. It's the warriors who survive everything except the peace. Audie Murphy saved countless lives. He served his country with distinction and courage beyond measure. He was everything we asked him to be and more, and it destroyed him. Slowly, quietly, inevitably. The boy from Texas who just wanted to feed his family became a killing machine who couldn't turn himself off. That's the real story. That's the truth behind the medals. So what do we do with this knowledge? How do we honor Audie Murphy and the millions like him who've carried war home in their hearts? First, we remember them correctly. Not as simple heroes or willing warriors, but as complex human beings asked to do inhuman things. We acknowledge that their scars run deeper than skin, that their battles didn't end with peace treaties, that their courage includes the daily act of continuing to live when death would be easier. You watching this, maybe you know someone like Audie Murphy. Maybe you are someone like him, carrying wounds nobody can see, fighting battles nobody understands, trying to find your way back from a war that never really ends. You're not alone. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're a survivor of something most people can't imagine, and that survival is its own kind of heroism. We owe our warriors more than parades and platitudes. We owe them understanding, treatment, time and space to heal. The recognition that asking someone to kill for their country changes them forever, and that change demands more than a handshake and a thank you for your service. Audie Murphy's legacy isn't just about valor in combat, it's about the cost of that valor. The price paid not just on battlefields but in bedrooms and boardrooms and quiet moments when the memories come flooding back. He showed us that our greatest heroes might also be our most wounded souls, and that true strength sometimes means admitting you need help. Every generation creates its Audie Murphys, young men and women who discover they have a terrible gift for violence, who use that gift in service of their country, and who spend the rest of their lives trying to find their way back to peace. They deserve better than what Audie got. They deserve a society that understands the true cost of war, that provides not just medals but mental health care, not just honor, but healing. The next time you see a veteran, remember Audie Murphy. Remember that the uniform might hide scars you can't see, that the smile might be covering nightmares you can't imagine, that inside every hero might live a hurt that no amount of glory can heal. This is their story. This is our responsibility. This is the truth about war that we must never forget. Because if we forget, if we continue to create perfect soldiers without planning for imperfect peace, then we doom every generation to produce its own Audie Murphys, heroes who save everyone but themselves, warriors who win every battle except the one for their own souls. Remember his name. Remember his pain. Remember that sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply continuing to live when everything inside you has already died. That's what Audie Murphy taught us. That's what we owe every warrior who follows in his footsteps. Like this video if it moved you. Subscribe to hear more untold stories of war's true cost. And in the comments below, share your thoughts, your own stories, or simply the name of someone who served. This channel exists for them, for the heroes who came home carrying wars nobody else could see. Because everyone who serves writes their name in history, even if that history is written in scars.